Mikey is an Air Force Academy graduate. As an officer training school Air Force officer, I can tell you that most of us stood in awe of Academy graduates and still do. So we're very anxious to hear from you, Mikey. The object of the foundation's being is to call out situations where military members are under undue pressure to adhere to some religious viewpoint or another. And so whether it's through coercion or comments of commanding officers, which is really a no-no. I don't know if any of us had the same things happen, those of us who are on extended active duty anyway, but apparently it is a problem now. So I guess without further ado, we'll have Mikey and his group take over.
I can hardly hear you.
I forgot to ask you, excuse me, do you have anything you need to share on the screen?
Me?
Yes.
No. I mean,
Okay.
I couldn't do it now if they had mentioned before. Vic, thank you very much. Actually, my last name is pronounced Weinstein. Half the family says Weinstein. I'm in the half that says Weinstein. So I appreciate that very much. Before I get going, I wanted to make it clear that I'm speaking to you tonight with the gun smoke in my face. We are fighting a war, and one of our strongest allies for years has been Peter Nikitas. Peter is my brother. He's the one that got me into JWV. And so I cannot say enough about his integrity and character. When you are living a life where it's pretty lonely, dangerous, brutal, and expensive, when you have allies out there that are unconditional in their support, the way that Peter is, you don't forget this. So I wanted to at least make that clear. Jeff, I haven't had the opportunity, I don't think, to meet you personally. And from what sounds like you're going to be moving to the adjutant job, but wanted to thank you also for your leadership. I think it's been something that has brought our two organizations closer together. We haven't always been all that close. We are now. And that's mostly due to Peter, but certainly has been significantly buttressed by your leadership during the time that you've been in. So I do feel like I'm with my own family. I do a lot of speaking. This one is, I think, special for me. I'll give you a little bit of background. I founded the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. My wife and I co-founded it in December of 2005. Prior to that, for 22 months, we've been fighting mostly at my alma mater, the Air Force Academy, because of an incident that happened on February 4th, 2004. You all may remember the movie from our good friend Mel Gibson called The Passion of the Christ, or as we refer to it, the Jesus Chainsaw Massacre, or Freddy versus Jesus. At the time, I had a number of my kids at the Air Force Academy, all of whom graduated. Got 4 of my kids who are graduates, who were under unbelievable pressure to go see that hideous movie. And that's when I began to realize that, we have a problem here. I know we only have a short amount of time tonight, but what started out realizing from that scenario has now led to well over 630 people full-time and volunteers that work at our foundation. We are heading up towards 75,000 clients. These are active duty, reserve guards, sailors, soldiers, Marines, airmen, guardians, civilian contractors, civilian members of the military. My daughter is a civilian member of the U.S. Army, and she's a budget analyst for the U.S. Army Ranger Battalion at Joint Base Lewis McChord. About 95% of our clients are either Catholic or Protestant that are being persecuted for not being Christian enough. We have hundreds of Jewish clients. We've had every religious faith you can have, and non-faith traditions like secularism, humanism, atheism, agnosticism. We've never had a Scientologist. That's one of the few. We have 12 clients that are members of the Church of the Jedi, right out of Star Wars. We don't care. I mean, we have a constitution that describes what we do. If you want more, you can go to our website at militaryreligiousfreedom.org. But basically, we are fighting one enemy, And these are known as fundamentalist or what's called dominionist Christians. Their desire is nothing less than Christian nationalism, to replace our democratic republic with a theological version of the kind of the weaponized gospel of Jesus Christ. I don't have time to back everything I'm up saying tonight. Peter knows. You can go to our website, you can see it. Our two biggest weapons are the weapons that terrify DOD, and that's taking them into court, where they have to be represented by the Department of Justice, and much more frequently going into the media, as we did today, earlier this morning, with a story about one of the large parachurch organizations stalking the children of military members on military bases, trying to convert them to Jesus Christ. Most of you look like you're old enough to remember a president called Eisenhower, and that his most famous speech was his farewell speech, where he warned America and the world about what, my brothers? What did he warn about in that farewell speech?
Military industrial complex.
Yes, exactly. What we fight here at MRFF, the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, is nothing less than a fundamentalist Christian nationalist parachurch military corporate congressional proselytizing complex. I heard Vic mention the term no, and Vic, I love you, brother, but it's not that. This is life and death. We've had a number of our clients commit suicide. We have clients of ours, we have 1,065 clients that are LGBTQ. We've got a dozen transgender clients. Some of them are in special forces, Ranger, Delta, Navy SEALs, Air Force PJs, Green Berets. It is an extremely serious situation. Jews, of course, are always marked. I went through a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism at the Air Force Academy. My father passed away in 2017. He was a classmate of Ross Perot's. I was Ross Perot's first general counsel. I'm a former White House lawyer. I was one of Reagan's lawyers. The last thing I did there was manage the Iran-Contra investigation. I tell you this so that you understand where I'm coming from. It's not as though I have a family of tree-hugging, Chardonnay sipping, Northern California, tree huggers. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm still a registered Republican. I just can't find one to vote for the last 30 years. We're talking about maintaining the separation between church and state, where all the nuclear weapons are, the drones, the conventional weapons, et cetera. And it's a extremely serious situation. We fight around the clock. When you do what we do, and you do it as aggressively as we do, because you have to be that aggressive or you won't get their attention, you turn yourself into what we call, gentlemen, and gentlemen and ladies, a tarantula on a wedding cake. We've all been to many weddings, and tarantulas on wedding cakes, they don't last very long. We have to live with our own private security detail, attack trained German Shepherds. You may see them going by here. A very close relationship with law enforcement agencies. I've had a church burned down the night before I was supposed to speak to it in Topeka, Kansas. We've had the windows shot out of our house on several occasions. And we've had swastikas and crucifixes painted on our house, innocent animals beheaded and disemboweled and left on the front of the house. Like I said, swastikas and crucifixes on the house, tires, beer bottles and feces thrown at the house. We're not going to stop doing what we're doing, but you don't sit here and fight kindly and nicely and very quietly when you're dealing with this type of tremendous. And obviously we have people all across the political spectrum in this meeting, but I can tell you that there is a particular focus on Christian nationalism in our country now. Our country obviously is being torn apart. We are more apart than I've ever been. I'm 66, but I remember Vietnam very well. I have 3 generations of military academy graduates in my family. And that's pretty much it. I'm sure you have some questions. Peter has kind of lived with everything we've been doing on an hourly or daily basis for years. And there have been some times when we've been able to get together with JWV, but mostly I built this so we didn't need to have other organizations. Yes, we can work with the ACLU and with Americans United, occasionally with the ADL, but most of them do not understand that the military is a particularly tribal, adversarial, communal, and ritualistic environment. Unless you've been in, as all of us have been, you don't understand that the dynamic between your military commander or supervisor or superior and you is not the same as the relationship between your shift manager at Starbucks or at Lowe's or Home Depot and you. The military is an extremely different environment. This has been going on for a long time, Vic. This latest time started probably in the early 80s. After the Vietnam loss, there was a vacuum of people that didn't want to be in the military anymore. And particularly, most of our recruiting efforts were focused on what we now call red states. And it continued to blossom and spread. It really kind of blew up after 9/11. But we're not dealing with an issue, problem, or challenge. This is a national security threat internally to our country, every bit as much as what we're facing externally by the Taliban, Al Qaeda, and every place else that we're dealing with, Boko Haram, etc. We have some big names that support us. I'm sure some of you remember Gary Johnson, the two-time Republican governor in New Mexico, who was the Libertarian presidential candidate the last couple of times. He's on our board, advisory board. Dick Lamb, the former three-term governor in Colorado. If you guys remember a TV show called MASH, Mike Farrell, who played Dr. B.J. Honeycutt's one of our most active folks. Colin Powell's chief of staff when he was Secretary of State and the JCS chairman. Colonel Larry Wilkerson's one of our most active advisory board members. It's a fight that doesn't go 9 to 5, it's around the clock. When we get a complaint, we got a bunch of them in today, we try to react within seconds or minutes and try never to go to hours. I know how it feels being the parent of when my kids were going through anti-Semitism blatantly at the Air Force Academy, being accused that they and their people, meaning us, the Jews, were totally complicit in the execution of Jesus Christ. You don't want to wait around for a phone call. So you better be ready to pick up that phone. Despite the fact we have hundreds of people that work here, if somebody wants to get me, I've actually thought about changing my middle name from Lewis to 505-250-7727, because we're going to be here and we're going to answer. And it's some of you may remember the attack on our consulate at Benghazi, in Benghazi, Libya. We lost 2 former Navy SEALs, one of whom, Glenn Doherty, he went down taking about 45 of them out. He was on that kind of annex when they blew him off with an RPG. Glenn was one of my closest friends, former Navy SEAL, and one of our earliest advisory board members. So I know what I'm saying to some of you may be a shock, but this has been going on for a long time. Today we picked up a new client, an Air Force Academy graduate, who was terminated by the Air Force without his knowledge, with 19 years in, because among other things, he didn't want to be in charge of putting together the annual Christmas party in the military unit. And every time he was on an air crew, he was called being a member of the Jew crew. There's a long list of other things. Anti-Semitism, hatred of homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, misogyny, hatred of the Constitution. We see it around the clock at the highest levels. It didn't make a difference when Obama was president. It didn't make a difference. Biden's been in, and even under Lloyd Austin, we're still seeing all kinds of horrible things happen. There are about 3 dozen parachurch organizations that run pell-mell through our U.S. military. You've heard of some of them: Campus Crusade for Christ Military Ministries, the Navigators, the Officers Christian Fellowship, the Christian Military Fellowship, Cadence International. They are funded by, they are inextricably intertwined into the very DNA of our military. And their job is to follow the Great Commission. And if you don't know what that is, that's a central part of Christianity, which is one of the last things Jesus is supposed to have said to his disciples. Matthew 28:19, Mark 16:15, go and make disciples of all nations. And they try to use the military subordinate relationship as a force multiplier. And when you're in the military, as you all know, if you're even being gently evangelized by your military superior, get the hell out of my face, sir or ma'am, is not an option for you. So they come to us, and we are extremely aggressive. Giving you an analogy, if some of you have cats and dogs, if you love them, the Humane Society pretty much has an office in every village in our country, and they're great. They do cookie sales, bake sales. They're wonderful for their animals. But when the going gets tough for animals, there's PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. We are PETA for the protection of the separation of church and state in our U.S. military. We don't apologize for our aggression. We have my wife has published 2 books with our publishers in Los Angeles just from the hate mail we get. Each book has gone to #1 in multiple categories at Amazon. It's like when people go to NASCAR, they want to see car wrecks. And we build ourselves to be self-sufficient. But generally my first call when something happens is to reach out to Peter Nikitas, who is a stud and has fallen on the sword for us many times to bring us together with JWV to help us in this fight. It's not an issue of, oh, someone has just misinterpreted and gotten a little bit too much zeal for Jesus. It is an attempt to, as I said before, to utilize the relationship of command, influence, and power, which is incredible in the military, over an otherwise helpless subordinate. Think of Jerry Sandusky at Penn State in that showering in that athletic facility with the little 9-year-old. The 9-year-old is the subordinate and the MRFF client, and Jerry Sandusky is the people we go after to fight. I'm done. Are there any questions?
Okay, here's what I want to do. I have a couple things I want to ask in terms of making the questions as easy to handle. What I'd like people to do, let me get rid of the spotlight here. Okay, as of right this minute, if anyone has a question, raise your hand and I'll write your name down and we'll get, so I see Jeff Sachs. I'm going to go to the next screen. It's not your last time either. Buzz, Chuck. We have some, okay, we have some people that I can't see, obviously, and you'll have to unmute yourself and speak out, but we'll hold that for right now. And then when I call on you, you can just, if you would unmute yourself and then mute yourself back so we can keep things as quiet and easy to understand as possible. So Mikey, you indicated it started in the early 80s. So when did you become aware? And the second question is, there's an organization called CUFI, Christians United for Israel. Your opinion of that organization?
I'll take the second question first. John Hagee is a monstrosity. We view him as a filthy monster, subhuman. Christians United for Israel is nothing more than an attempt to try to bring about the, serve as an accelerant and lubricant to bring about their eschatological Armageddon, where the fundamentalist Christians that we fight, dominionists, are promised a 200-mile long river, 4.5 feet deep, filled with the blood of those that have fought against Christ. A lot of that is Jewish blood. So I loathe John Hagee, and I loathe Christians United for Israel. Next question. How did I find out about it? As I told you, I went through anti-Semitism myself, particularly my first year. It's called the Dooley year at the Air Force Academy, like the plebe year at my father's alma mater, the Naval Academy at Annapolis or at West Point. But when that movie came out and I saw the incredible pressure being put on the cadet wing, the faculty and staff at my alma mater to go see that filthy movie, that's when I began to realize, Houston, like I said, it's not a problem. What do we, or issue or challenge? It's a national security threat. My wife and I started taking a hard look at this, and both of our sons at the time, we had future family members, including my daughter-in-law, who were there, explained what they had gone through, being on the athletic fields or in the squadron area, being accused of killing Jesus and all of the other stuff that goes with that. I took a hard look at it. There was a lot of cognitive dissonance because it was hard for me. I held my alma mater in such high regard. Many people do. You heard what Vic said earlier. We reached out immediately to other organizations, and we couldn't get a response. I couldn't even get someone to answer my phone at the ACLU or get a return call from Americans United. They're one of our closest allies at the time. Couldn't get any help from the ADL. And my wife and I finally decided after 22 months, we're gonna have to form our own thing. And we formed it to be a weapon. And when someone, we've worked very hard to get to where we are now. We're actually in our, I guess, 17th or 18th year of the fight, but as an actual 501c3, it was December 15th, 2005. Next question.
Okay, Commander Sachs.
Oh, first of all, I want to use this opportunity to thank you, Mikey, because you've done some yeoman work this year. I thought you might want to just expound. Oh, yeah, by the way, yeah, he does call Peter, and Peter lights a fire under me. so that's that we do support the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. I thought you might want to expound on 3 of the major cases that we joined forces for this year, starting with the Nazi tombstones, the Monument, and the chap one who had a DOD website. So,
Yes, Jeff, there are so many, and it's hard to keep them all together. That we got together, we were reached out to by a full colonel, retired full colonel, Air Force Academy graduate, happened to be Jewish, who came to us with a story that was hard to believe, that he lived in the San Antonio, Joint Base San Antonio area, and he was sick and tired of visiting his grandfather, who was an ambulance driver in World War I, when he would walk past the gravestones of deceased German POWs that had swastikas on them and an homage to the German people and Adolf Hitler. We've actually polygraphed a number of our clients because we couldn't believe the things they told us were true. We've never had one fail a polygraph, and those polygraphs can be expensive, $800 to $1,500. We've had some of our clients refuse to take them, and then we won't represent them. In this instance, seeing was believing. We saw the gravestones. We were stunned, and we joined forces with JWV. We were able to force the monstrosity, who at the time was the VA secretary, who's a big believer in the lost cause and a Confederate fetishist from the Civil War, to Mr. Wilkie, to testify before Congress. And eventually, despite the fact that he initially stated, of course, he was Trump's person, that they would never take those things down, they did pull those gravestones down, and we had a big win there, which was wonderful. The amount of threats against our lives, our family, and our staff on that was literally off the scale. I had a close friend of mine, a relatively young man who flies for a major airline now, who was an early 2000s Air Force Academy graduate that was a member of our family. He's very German. We terminated our relationship over that. He didn't understand why MRFF would be involved with that. That had nothing to do with religion. Those were just German POWs that were just giving, and the swastika was just, the organization that they worked for, and Hitler was just their head at the time. I'll listen to this so long, and we're done. That guy, we're done. The next one involved a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout. Some of you know about the Boy Scouts. My son Curtis was actually the Eagle Scout of the Year, believe it or not, back in 2002 here in New Mexico. The Boy Scouts have an Eagle project when you become Eagle. There was a young man, 16 years of age, in Monument, Colorado, which is essentially Colorado Springs. It actually borders the northern border of the Air Force Academy, who put up a monument allegedly to his grandfather and someone else in his family that stated that only two entities, defining entities, have ever offered to die for you: the American soldier and our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. That's fine if it was going to be private. It also put the logos of the military branches up there on that. We have 12 families we're representing in that area. 8 of them are Christians. A number of them are professors at the Air Force Academy. It turned out the town of Monument was inextricably intertwined in developing and maintaining this monument, and we blew that up. And after about 2 weeks, the city council voted to sell the land to the Boy Scouts family. They didn't. They simply sold 5 plots where you can bury people at $800 a pop, and you can't bury anybody there because of the monument there. Called Peter. I think Peter called Jeff, and JWV came in with us. We are currently trying to find a plaintiff there that would be willing to be a non-Jane or John Doe, but they're afraid. They're afraid they're going to face the threats that we get every day here, and have to live the way we do. I understand that. We are still in the process of doing that so we can try to sue the town council there. Jeff, we have so many issues with chaplains. I forget the one that we're currently dealing with, a chaplain that's running for Congress.
killed Christ.
What's the other one?
The one with the chaplain said we killed Christ, and they put it up on a DOD website.
Yes. About 84% of the chaplains in the U.S. military now are evangelical, which by itself is not a problem. We have a number of evangelicals on our staff. They donate to us. They're clients of ours. When they cross the line, Jeff and everyone else, is when they become dominionists or Christian nationalists, when they feel that their zeal to get everyone to follow the Great Commission of Jesus, get everybody into the religion, can be done irrespective of the time, place, and manner constraints of our Constitution, the directives, instructions, and regulations of our Pentagon, and all of the case law we have, the UCMJ, and the core values of the military. This chaplain put up a lesson on a DOD website that not only did the Jews kill Jesus, but we should all apologize for killing him. Jeff, can I make this up? Peter, am I making this up? No, I'm not. And so we got the website taken down. It's very, very rare whenever any of these people are appropriately punished. We get criticized, all of the people that you might imagine, Billy Graham hated us. Franklin Graham, his ridiculous, hideous son, hates us. All of the big people you see that are out there in the media. I did a couple of interviews with Bill O'Reilly until the last one got so bad he cut my mic. And when I got off the set, the first calls that were coming in were not in English. They were just gunfire, literally gunfire. So, we're going to stand up and say what needs to be said. If I wasn't a lawyer and my last name was Smith, I don't think I'd catch 99% of the hell I get. But my last name is Weinstein, and I'm a lawyer. And the anti-Semitism, and for someone, you can ask Peter, because Peter's been in our orbit for years, and I pretty much sent him everything. And Peter, if you want to give 30 seconds to our brothers and sisters here as to some of the stuff we get on a daily basis that you see, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mikey, and Joe and Jeff. I get loads and loads of forwarded bile and vile sent Mikey's way in the direction of the MRFF. And I find a great deal of sadness and anger when I see the senders of this being service members, and particularly graduates of the respective service academies. I want you to know that Mikey and the MRFF occupy the pointed end of the spear, to address anti-Semitism. And he is in the position that Pinchas was in the book of Numbers, when the children of Israel were under assault, and a lot of it was on account of their own complacency. And Pinchas took matters into his own hands when Moses was MIA, and ran through two of the biggest malefactors with his own spear. Never did he ever take up a spear ever again, according to Torah. Yet he caused the plague to lift, and he got the high priesthood. And he also overcame a lot of insults on account of the fact that he was not Jewish on one side of his family, but he was Aaron's grandson, and he had the tip of the spear, just as Mikey is having the tip of the spear in this particular day and age. And I want to share something that I shared with Mikey on the chat line, that over 20 years ago, a fellow named Noam Chomsky was a guest on Wisconsin Public Radio. And I asked him, managed to get through on the line, whether Israel was going to have a problem, or whether they were having a problem with separation of shul from state, to draw the analogy with which we're familiar with service members and as Americans. And he said, as long as the special forces and the IDF are majority secular and socialist, there'll be stability in the state of Israel. Once that changes and ultra-Orthodox dominate those positions, there will be chaos. And things have become unsettled in the last 25 years, from the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin of blessed memory going forward. And that trend in the IDF has come to pass. And that trend has come to pass within the armed forces of the United States. You see these dominionists, these reactionary Christians who interpret their final book of the New Testament, Revelation, to call for conversion of 144,000 Jews and death by fire to the rest of us. This is their mission. This is their idea of end times. These are the forces against which we find ourselves arrayed today. And Mikey and the MRFF are the pointy end of the spear to ward this off. Okay, and I commend to you reading anything from MRFF, and get on their the website and the distribution on these matters. I've probably gone over my time, but I certainly would field any questions or follow up, Joe, if if it's requested. But thank you
Okay,
for that opportunity.
So we have one written question from Mike Shapiro. It's addressed basically to Mikey and Peter. Either or both of you can answer. This question is, you mentioned that you use the courts and media in your fights. Which courts, military, local, state, federal, you use to fight your cases, and who represents your clients?
Well, I'll jump in. I mean, it's to begin with in the military, as Peter knows, you cannot, we go into federal court. We don't go into military courts. I have testified in court martials before in other proceedings, but we go into federal court because they have the jurisdiction in these matters. But you cannot bring a federal case until you've exhausted all administrative remedies. And that means that if you have a complainant, a sailor, soldier, Marine Airman, Coast Guardsman, or Guardian, the Air Force, the Space Force, you must first exhaust by filing an IG complaint, Inspector General, or an EEO complaint. The problem with that is that even though they guarantee anonymity, it's never there. We go back to this concept of being a tarantula on a wedding cake. And you would be shocked at the number of professional IG and EEO military members who come to us as clients, the number of JAGs, the number of commanders, generals, admirals, SES level civilians, and chaplains that come to us for help. It's on a daily, hourly basis. And so when we go into court, we've done it on a few occasions. It's federal court. That's where we have to go. And I forgot what the second question was, if there was a second question.
Well, it's who represents the clients.
We have an array of attorneys that we use that will either do it pro bono, or it's sometimes the client. I mean, we never charge our clients anything, so they get us for literally. We never charge anything. We are, there's never ever we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We will either try to arrange counsel for them that will do it pro bono. We have some fabulous lawyers that have done that. I will help if I can, to the extent I can. But we will also sometimes get counsel that need to work out a financial arrangement with our clients so that they can be compensated, or they can sue under a statute, as you know, Peter, that provides the attorney's fees to be recovered. For instance, we sued the Air Force Academy with a former lawyer, high level in the Obama administration, because they were violating the Freedom of Information Act. We won $25,000 from them. That's what they were forced to pay, which we got our lawyers' fees out of that. They still drag their heels all the time. We have our own MRFF calendar. Whenever we get to the holidays, it's always the worst. The number of Jewish personnel that are swept into the we fight against Christmas parties. They can't be called that, but holiday parties that are still Christmas. It literally goes around the clock, and we have to be aggressive and fast, and we have to be able to communicate at any time of the day or night with our clients so that they know we are there for them. As a pissed off parent, my wife and I saw what was happening to our own children. And you love your children. Your children are you. When they hurt, you hurt. And I went through some very serious, I was beaten twice within a week during my first year at the academy, had swastika notes come under the door. My two roommates and myself, we were in a 3-person room. They never caught who did it. And they ended up blaming me. And as an 18-year-old, I struck back and hit an OSI officer who tried to get me to sign a confession. I ran back to my dorm room at the academy, expecting to be court-martialed. They never did a thing to me. They never found him. They never did a thing. And I let it go. 30 years later, the same crap was visited upon my own children. So if you love your children and grandchildren, whether they are biological, adopted, foster children, or just they're in your life and that they mean something to you, that is what fuels me. All of our clients are our children. There's a saying that people that love you care about how they make you feel. And my wife and I don't want anyone to have to go through what we went through with our children, how they felt. They're all academy graduates now. They're all doing well. But when I say nearly a day doesn't go by, I mean, it's rarely hard. It's a rarity when we don't get new clients within an hour or two. And so I'm not very religious, but I don't know that anybody is reminded more times during the day that they're Jewish than I am. when I wake up every morning, there's about 15 to 16, maybe sometimes 25 proselytizing emails coming in. They come in in the mail, text, email, phone calls, carrier pigeons, smoke signals, whatever. They compare me to, if you're familiar a little bit, I know you are, Peter, with Saul of Tarsus, who persecuted all the Christians and then had his defining moment seeing Jesus in a white light on the road to Damascus. And they view me as being someone who eats Christians for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, despite the fact we have a very, very large staff here. After Glenn Doherty was killed at Benghazi, we wanted Schwarzkopf to come on our advisory board. He was interested, but he had prostate cancer. He was dying. Then we wanted Colin Powell. And not being able to get him, we got to his chief of staff, retired full Colonel Larry Wilkerson, who teaches government and public policy at the College of William and Mary. And Larry's in the media all the time. He said he'd been in for 30 years, never heard of this problem, but he agreed to let me try to have a little time to convince him. Almost to the day, 6 months after being in our orbit, as Peter has been in our orbit for years, I got a call on a Tuesday night like this from Larry saying, I give up, I'm in. My wife and I have seen everything that's going on. And this was 2012, around there. And Larry's been one of our most vocal and active advisory board members. And you have to look hard and see what's going on, because it's easy. Fish in an aquarium, my brothers and sisters, they never see the water. They don't see it. This is not the military that perhaps you experienced. It may not have been the military my father experienced, but it is the military that we've had in place now, been growing like this since the early to mid 80s. And since 9/11, it's been out of control. We've given up trying to get Democrats or Republicans to help. Most of them are terrified of losing Christian nationalist money or votes. It's a very difficult thing. So we're not going to sit around and wait for someone. We'll do it ourselves. And that's what we're about.
It's like you've opened a whole new world, at least to me, something I never heard of before. Mike Shapiro, do you have a follow-up?
No, you really did answer my questions. And I mean, how high has the level of federal courts have you had to go to?
Well, I mean, district level. I mean, because we don't, you have to be able to. We sued the Air Force Academy for making it essentially mandatory using command influence to go to their National Day of Prayer. Mm-hmm. They thought we'd last 15 minutes in court. We lasted 3 days, but it left such a bad taste in their mouth. As Peter knows, you don't have to win and get a verdict that takes years. Just drag them in, and they are terrified. And they've been terrified to fight back, although we still have over 400 clients, cadets, faculty, and staff there. We have clients that are on every aircraft carrier, submarines, every military base you can imagine. We represent a little more than 18% of all Muslims that we know of in the U.S. military. And so generally there's the threat of litigation, but what seems to terrify them most is exposure in the media. We don't even need reporters. We have our own, we can break our own stories, as we did today. Peter, you probably saw it in the Daily Coast with a story that's probably still trending there. We have a lot of reporters we work with, Army Times, Air Force Times, Navy Times, Marine Times, military.com, whatever. We just got picked up the other day with the Religion News Service on a story about a fundamentalist Christian chaplain candidate. He's a 26-year-old first lieutenant in the Phoenix area who's running to fight AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, using pictures of himself in uniform and claiming he's a chaplain. He's not. He's a chaplain candidate. He's violating all of the DoD regs on this. We had a number of extremely senior people at the Pentagon that came to us saying, and it irritates me, but I don't ever tell them, Mikey, can you do this? If you take this up for us, because if we do it, it'll look bad for our career. We blew it up in the media. We demanded an Army investigation. He's being investigated now. And and we haven't decided, they haven't told us yet what the result of that is going to be. 99% of the time, our target is a fundamentalist Christian nationalist. If you haven't heard about the New Apostolic Reformation, the Seven Mountains theology, go ask Sarah Palin. McCain unfortunately opened that door. But under the Trump administration, it was completely and totally out of control. And Christian nationalism, again, was part of the very air conditioning of what happened on January 6th. So it's something that, as I said before, I want to make it clear, it's not NASA, we have a problem. This is a national security threat to our country. And we see it every day. And even though it's not fun to have to look over my shoulder, have to live with the dogs, the guns, the bodyguards, we're working with the U.S. Secret Service now over someone who's threatened us quite often, who made a direct threat against Biden and Kamala Harris and General Milley just a few days ago. This person has made the same threats, trying to get me shot as well. That comes with the territory. Although I may not be the strongest believer in Jewish theology, I'm very proud of my Judaism. We have a lot of Holocaust survivors, a lot of Holocaust fatalities in my family. I remember one story with my great aunt Herta, who passed away, as Peter would say, of blessed memory, who warned me. We were just starting the foundation. I went to see her. She was 3 days away from passing. She was on her deathbed, as it was. Had a very she and her daughter each gave 4 hours of video testimony to Steven Spielberg after Schindler's List came out, if you're aware of that. It was stunning to see what she said. We never asked her about it. She was a devout atheist, but proud of her Judaism. And she told me, I have her picture right here on my desk. This is my Aunt Herta. She said, I remember being in Berlin when the first pronouncements came down that Jews couldn't get together in groups of more than 50. Then it was 30. Then it was 10. Then it was 2. Then it was 0. All the Jews had to have the same alphanumerics on their license plates. And we waited too long. She wanted to know if I had anything to say to her. I asked her why she got so mad at the family when we tried to take her car keys away, as she became very infirm. She didn't have much energy yet left in her body, but she got up on her elbows and she said, because when you're a Jew, you always have to be ready to get away. Ladies and gentlemen, she was, brothers and sisters, she was on her deathbed. Not anymore. Inside of my academy class ring, I have the words never again. We all know what that means, but we're facing it again now. I've put my wife, my children, my family at risk. I'm not playing the violin, but it's lonely out here. So when we get the help of people like Peter, who reached out for nothing, there was nothing for him to do this. He reached out on his own way before he became the National Staff Judge Advocate. We get the help of folks at Americans United, or occasionally at the ACLU, even less occasionally at the ADL. We'll take it. But when you're in your late 80s and you still want the keys to your Buick in Albuquerque, New Mexico, so that you can get away, we have to fight. We can't be Woody Allen Jews. We have to be Judah Maccabee Jews. I don't know most of you. I can tell that Jeff is one of these, but I guarantee you that Peter Nikitas is, because we've run through hell in a gasoline suit together, have done it for a long time. So I didn't know Vic, but when he asked me if I wanted to do this, I wanted to hustle back here and do it. We spent the weekend up in Colorado spreading the ashes of my mother-in-law, who recently passed away. She would have been 91. It's my wife's mother. So her last request was we spread her ashes up on Pikes Peak. We went up, did it, came back late yesterday so I could do this because I thought it was important. But I think we all have a Herta Long in our families. So this isn't a situation about it being a no-no, meaning no disrespect at all, Vic. I know a lot of people are having their eyes open here. This is not that. This is an attempt, once again, to erase the biological base of Judaism on this planet. But remember, most of our clients are Protestants. That's the 75,000 that we almost have. 3/4 of that 95% are Protestants. The other 1/4 are Roman Catholic. And so I think there's the concept that all blood is bonded. We are all together. You don't need to have adopted someone or be related to someone biologically. We have to fight. We have to fight, and we have to do it together. We have to realize how important it is. And I'm beyond trying to justify what I do. I'm not a perfect person. You can ask my wife of 44 years. But I do know one thing, that when you have to, as Machiavelli said in The Prince, gentlemen and ladies, when you aim at the prince, you better effing kill the prince. Are there any other questions?
Okay, Buzz Alpert,
Oh, I go ahead, Joe.
go ahead.
Mikey, I was the head of the Jewish Defense League in Chicago for 10 of its 10.5 years. And I was probably the most hated Jew in the city. You name it, they hated me, and they tried to get me arrested by the FBI. But I was very fortunate to make a connection with a Chicago police undercover cop, Irish Catholic guy, great guy, Bob Murray. And Bob seemed to identify with our fight against the Nazis, the Klan, associate of Black September, and anti-American Arab groups. When 10 synagogues were desecrated in West Rogers Park, that time a very Jewish area, the Jewish leadership came out and said, it's my fault that the synagogues were desecrated. If we hadn't beaten up the Nazis, they wouldn't have desecrated our synagogues. I cannot comprehend that kind of thinking. And Murray introduced me to another Irish Catholic, two Irish Catholic guys in the 20th district in Chicago that was in charge of that West Rogers Park area. And he called up and said, arrest Buzz Alpert. I can't remember if it was A. Abbott Rosen or Nissen Gross. He said, they have baseball bats. You've got to stop them, arrest them. And Commander Conley said, thank you for calling. Have a good day. Called me up and said, Buzz, I'm sorry to tell you this. These are his exact words. One of your own wants me to arrest you. So we can be our own worst enemy. No question about it.
Yes, yes.
And well, all I can say is that it was an uphill battle, and the lawyers that would come to, I give a lot of speeches, and the lawyers would come and they would try to catch me, but they never did. And I was always respectful. And one of the most interesting things personally now was after the first time in Berwyn, and we beat the hell out of the Nazis and the Klan every time we faced them. Murray came to my house one night and he said his CI's confidential informants in the Klan and the Nazis couldn't understand how Jews beat up Nazis. He says, just, it can't be. They couldn't accept it. So they told, the CIs told Bob, they've decided they had to kill me. And Murray said to me, Bob, Buzz, I want you to carry a gun. I can't authorize it. We were good friends, and he wanted me to protect myself. So ironically, I carried a Walther PPK 380 Nazi attic for 10 years. And I'm still careful. I'm still careful. But the rabbis, when the Nazis wanted to come to Skokie, the rabbis told publicly, said, pull your shades down and ignore them. And I publicly said that didn't work in the 30s. It's not going to work in the 70s.
No.
And we really, even though we defended Judaism, defended our faith, defended our people, we were hated by the Jewish people. Hated.
We have a lot of the same. I mean, I'm constantly being called a self-hated, hating Jew.
I'm sure you do.
AIPAC doesn't like us a whole lot. And
That's a compliment.
yeah, that's what I view as well. And I appreciate very much what you said, and I can easily commiserate with it. The other thing is I'm sure you know, is that we don't really have any other friends or family that know what this feels like. One of our strongest supporters, my board member, was Joe Wilson, Ambassador Joe Wilson, who wrote the letter to the New York Times about the fact there was no yellow cake uranium in Niger when he went there. And of course, his wife is the outed CIA agent, Valerie Plame, a very dear friend of ours, who was kicked out of the CIA with 1 year to go before retirement. Very few people know what this feels like. And I'm not complaining. I'm saying that a lot of my classmates from the academy, my wife's friends, have retirement homes or playing with the grandkids and this and that. And particularly when I want to say this, we get tremendous support from Jewish organizations and Jewish individuals. They're our biggest donors. They're fabulous. And I give it as an example, Peter Nikitas, having been with us for years and now forming this relationship, thanks to the leadership of Jeff. But I know the feeling, brother. I know that feeling and of being alone. When you try to explain the security issues, I mean, even this past weekend when we were in Colorado spreading the ashes of my mother-in-law, we still had to bring one of our attack dogs with us and our guns. And, even our kids don't like to be reminded of it. And people go, well, how serious can this be? And it's a burden to try to explain this to people that don't understand it and still live a regular life. But our people we have been around for thousands of years. And whether we are Christian, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, agnostic, Buddhist, Hindu, it doesn't matter. We are human beings. We have rights. And the beauty of this country was that we were supposed to not judge the value of your American citizenship through the lens of whether you are a fervent enough Christian. That was specifically decided by our founding framers, that we weren't going to do that in this country the way it was done in Salem with the witch trials, and the way it was done with in Europe, when most of the people in control then had been men, with political power, had been men of the cloth, and we weren't going to do that here. And so it's tough, but that's why I'm talking on a Tuesday night to you guys.
Well, I offer you one last thought, which I think you will agree with. Any Jew who will listen to me, and I still have a lot of very hostile feelings, people haven't forgotten. I say to them, we are guests of the Christian people in America. Have a current passport, keep a good amount of cash in the house, own a gun legally, and know how to use it.
My wife's best friend came from a South American country. She's Jewish, and she just lives a few miles away. To this day, she keeps a large amount of cash there. I go back to what my Aunt Herta said about keep a car, but keep the key, get ready to run.
Yeah.
And I know it's horrible to sit there. I remember growing up, my own mother telling me that this is a Christian country. We shouldn't rock the boat. And we have a constitution here, and we are going to rock the boat, and we are going to stand up for our rights, and we're going to make sure that we are every bit as good as anyone else who's a Christian, Muslim, atheist, or whatever. But particularly, it's bad enough when you find Christian nationalism, dominionism among the sewage workers, the cops, the firefighters, in public schools and in legislatures. But when you find it in the technologically most lethal organization ever created by our species, Homo sapiens, the United States military, it's off the scale. And we are the only organization that focuses with laser-like precision on fighting this, where all the nuclear weapons are, and like I said, the laser-guided weapons, the drones, and the conventional weapons.
Thanks
And
for what you do.
we found at Buzz, we found that when we talk to everybody, the other organizations, they do not understand the military. They do not understand. I mean, I gave a speech at Harvard not that long ago where I asked for a show of hands for anyone out there that knew the difference between an officer and an enlisted person. I think I saw 2 or 3 hands come up. So most Americans have very little understanding about the military. They don't understand it. And we will leave a lot of fights to, the ACLU, and there are friends there, Americans United. One of the 2 co-founders of the Southern Poverty Law Center, you got Morris Dees. The other one was Joe Levin, Jewish, a very dear friend. Joe's on our advisory board, very dear friend. And
It might interest you, and I would be happy if you give me a contact the way to reach you. The Illinois Holocaust Museum did a documentary on the Nazi attempt to march in Skokie in 1978. It won 2 Emmys on national television, on public television, and it was very well received. If you'd like me to send you the link, it doesn't cost anything. You just put it in Google and it comes up.
Well, that's an important thing for me because I was a first-year law student that year, and I was asked by my constitutional law professor the first day there whether or not I would be willing to. We had to, using the Socratic method. Peter, you understand, for lawyers, I was supposed to defend the Nazis' right to go through Skokie, and I was infuriated with my con law professor, who became a very, very famous jurist. That's all I'll say. I came down after class afterwards, and I said, Professor, you saw my last name and you specifically
Right.
chose me for this. He goes, I did, welcome to the law. And I learned an awful lot about that. He wasn't a bad guy at all, but that's why Skokie said 1978 was my first year in law school, Buzz. So you hit if you'd like to send that, that's fine. Peter has my contact information, but it's important. It's important to our species that we stand up, not just being Jews. I really hate it when someone calls me an American Jew. I'm a Jewish American. One is an adjective and one is a noun.
Right.
And I remember at the Air Force Academy, then I'll stop. Day one, I was asked a question, and I said, my first day of basic cadet training, or plebe summer for you, Peter. And I was asked a question. I said, sir, I believe. And he goes, no, you don't ever say you believe. You only believe in our Lord, God and country. That's it. Day three, I was asked if I knew why there were 17 spires on the Academy Chapel. I didn't. And he said, 5 of those are for the 5 Air Force Chiefs of Staff, because in the summer of 73, there'd only been 5. The other 12 are the disciples of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Oh.
On day 5, we were running in formation, and there was a Jody. You know what a Jody is. And this one was, all ye boys with hair so wavy, come and join the Jewish Navy. It was all about how the Jews wouldn't fight in World War II. They ran to the Coast Guard. On day 7, during BCT, the table commandant demanded to know how I would handle this situation. He called me Wad Weinstein, wise ass Dooley Weinstein. I was just a basic cadet. You're now in charge, Weinstein, of a 4-ship formation of F-4 Phantoms, because the Phantoms were big back then. And you've been told to bomb and strafe Tel Aviv. What do you do? Now, I happen to know that this particular first classman, a firstie, I was a basic cadet, not even a 4th classman yet, or a Dooley, was a big, very, very, very proud of his Irish heritage, which he never failed to tell us about. So I simply said, sir, may I ask a question? He was stunned that I wouldn't even, I just said, sir, what would you do if you were told to do the same thing to Dublin, Ireland? All I remember are the chairs squeaking back and the upperclassmen around me, yanking me away from the table and running me. I'd never finished the meal, running me outside until I vomited. And that set the tone for the next 4 years at the Academy. And so those are days 1, 3, 5, and 7. They were all odd numbered days. I met my wonderful wife there when I was a 4th classman. We got married we had the only Jewish wedding in the history of the Protestant chapel at the Academy, which they tried to cancel the night or two before we got married there. And fortunately, we have a lot of lawyers in the family. I'm proud to be Jewish. And it took a sagacious mensch like Peter to kind of bring our 2 organizations together, because way before, back in the early days, it was not good. And I don't know how he did it, but he got me to become a member. I'm a proud member. He invited and hosted my wife and I out there a couple of years ago. I think we got some award at a beautiful dinner. We gave a speech, and I'm not trying to make it Peter Nikitas centric or Jeff centric, but Jeff has been the kind of has exercised the kind of leadership we needed. And it's helpful to have more than one organization do this. And but we'll do it alone if we have to, but we prefer not to.
What's your
Okay,
website?
Buzz, we're going to move on, Buzz.
Okay,
All right, one last question. I'm going to call on Chuck Orloff. If anyone else has anything they want to ask, if you shoot me an email, I'll forward it and we'll get an answer from Mikey. We don't want to run too late tonight. So Chuck, if you want to unmute yourself.
Unfortunately, I didn't have a question. Man was very interesting. There's an awful lot of food for thought. I have some military background. I'm just a reservist, but I think I have enough experience to know what took place and what was taking place. Just the idea of having to go to in my time, just to go to have services on Saturday at a local hall was sometimes an ordeal. And so we had to make up excuses to get out. But that's 50 years ago. That's 50 years ago, and it still exists. So I don't have a question. I'm just an observer.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. It was an amazingly interesting and eye-opening presentation, and I'm sure I'm speaking for a lot of us here this evening.